The VO2 max, well, it's the number one predictor of how long they're gonna live. I'm sure that most people on this earth want to live for as long as they possibly can. And just by figuring out what the ratio between your oxygen intake, carbon dioxide output is gonna give you that
metric.
Yeah.
That it's the number one test for you to do for your longevity. All right, welcome back to the Reboot You podcast. I'm here with Lewis. Lewis, before we get started, I just want to know, what do you want people to take away from this podcast?
I would say the number one thing I want people to take away from this podcast is that sometimes experience does trump formal education, regardless of, how many years you have learning it, how many years do you have practicing it? What have you gone through personally that correlates to what you're trying to fix?
I totally agree. Most of what I've learned is from experience, for sure. I've had all this great mentoring over the years, which is a big part of it. But I feel like once you do it, and you see the results, there's nothing that really justifies a motive you that okay, that does work, or that didn't work for that person. I do think that's probably one of the best ways to learn is to just be in it and do it, right? So what is it that you do?
So I own a rehabilitation and athletic development company. We also have one of the first, if not the only, mobile anti-gravity rehabilitation clinic in the entire country.
Nice.
So essentially what we do is we're able to take the best clinical grade technology in the world for lower extremity rehabilitation and deliver that service directly to our customers. You got to figure, you get a knee replacement, you get an ACL, surgery, things along that line. Mobility and getting to your doctor's appointments is already a hassle. Getting ready, moving around is a hassle. So if we can take away and eliminate the travel time as well as the wait time in the actual clinic, then that should be essentially priceless for somebody like that.
That sounds very specialized. So how'd you get into that?
So this kind of really cool thing about the experience, right? So I actually I ran Division I cross country and track and field at the University of Florida. So that's kind of where I got my introduction to this piece of technology that I eventually ended up using in my business. It helped me substantially after I fractured my fibula my senior year of cross country in high school. And about a year and a half later, I was able to run an 18-second PR in a 4-mile race, doing most of my training on this anti-gravity treadmill. So
nice. So you physically did it before you even knew about it?
Correct.
Okay, that's cool.
I had no idea what this thing was doing for me until I, put it on paper, essentially.
So people that don't know what it is, kind of give me a walk. What's that look like?
So think of an iPad right there on your treadmill, and it's a traditional treadmill, but it's enclosed, and it essentially just pumps pressurized air into an enclosed chamber for and you're attached into it, you're harnessed at the waist, and it's able to lift you by pressurizing the chamber. And I'm able to control somebody's body weight from 20% up to 100% in 1% increments.
So I could be walking on this and there's no physical weight on my legs while I'm stepping? Is that?
You're close, yeah. Of course, you're going to have a little bit of that physiological demand, of course. What it was able to do for me was allow me to not create as many micro tears in every step that I'm taking when I'm running. So my recovery capacity went through the roof. I was able, the food that I'm eating gets processed much quicker because the tears are this big instead of this big.
So I'm picturing you step into this thing, it pressurizes, it takes whatever weight you chose off of you actually standing, right?
Right.
So this is good for who? And you mentioned a couple, but what's the ideal person? Who's this benefit?
I use it in a couple different ways in my business. I will use it a lot for the very first person that I got introduced to use this on was actually an older gentleman getting a knee replacement. So we were able to get him at 45% of his total body weight at 77 years old and getting him to walk with no pain sensation in the knee. So for that case in particular, we were actually able to cut off the pain receptors from his brain to the post-surgical area, where now he's able to get into full range of motion and to ranges of motion that he would not have been able to get into using a more traditional rehabilitative method.
Wow. Okay. So you got into this because of your own injury. and you saw the treadmill, like, wow, this is amazing. So at some point, did you get into buying the machine, or were you getting in, like, what's your background? Are you in physical therapy or?
I'm a corrective exercise specialist and
Okay.
a personal trainer as well. So I'm able to, take my athletic background, use that to help other athletes kind of get to that next level. And then I, go in and got my corrective exercise specialization so that I can work on the rehabilitative end as well. So I can cover both sides of the
Nice.
spectrum.
So let me ask you this, because as a personal trainer, typically you train people day to day, you work them out, you might stretch them, you might do a little bit more with them, depends, talk a little nutrition. So what made you go this far beyond just personal training?
I just needed something that would be able to get my foot in the door, right? Because the body can only move the way it's meant to move. It doesn't matter, again, how many years of school you did. If you know how to engage the right muscles to fix or evaluate certain areas, then you can make substantial gains in that way. So with my athletic background, with my injury history and my experience with knowing what worked for me and what didn't work for me, I just wanted to make a breakthrough, a technological breakthrough of the rehabilitative space and athletic development space. Because here in Marion County, we do have some absolutely phenomenal athletes that will go on. We have a couple that have played in the NFL, et cetera, many that go to play at least collegiate level sports. So, and it's a very old demographic here as well. So I know that, okay, with my athletic experience, I can at least help on the high school level.
Yeah.
And
So you saw an opportunity there.
absolutely.
Is there anybody else that has this equipment right now that's utilizing it, or?
I don't believe so. I mean, I know that there's one UF clinic here locally that uses one, but they can't deliver the product to their customer. Their customer has to physically enter the clinic and go through the whole, physician, no referral process. So ours is unique in the way that if you want to try it and you want to use it, experience it for yourself, all you got to do is just give me a call and I'll get you on there without having to worry about.
That's cool. One of the reasons I was excited to do this podcast with you is because you're young, you're in your early 20s, right? How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this about 3 years now.
Yeah. So you were like 20 years old when you started, right? My first job in the health industry, I was that dude in the gym that walks around and like cleans all the equipment and like brushes things up. So I was like the cleaner of the gym. That was my first gym job or job in the health industry, period. And, I built my way up to now I have Reboot You and I have my clinic and several different aspects of the wellness industry. And so I kind of see that in you. Like, I feel like you're on that path, because when you're a personal trainer and you decide to go to the extent of doing something that advanced, like the zero gravity treadmill for rehab, that means to me that you're not just trying to stay in your lane. Like, you want to make an impact, right? So I think that's super cool. So I'm excited to see where you're going to go with it. And the other thing is, like, from what I understand with all these podcasts and the things that I've learned, VO2 max, they're actually claiming that it's the number one test for you to do for your longevity. So why? Do you know why?
Yeah, actually, it's great that you mentioned that, because alongside with the treadmill, I actually have a device that does the VO2 max testing as well. So I was actually able to do my own case study of what I thought the treadmill was doing for me and put that theory to test. So I was doing 100% body weight VO2 max test and an 80% body weight VO2 max test.
Okay.
That was traditionally what body weight I was running at the most frequently when I was injured. The results came back that the high intensity performance metric was about 35% greater at 80%, and the recovery capacity was also about 35% greater. So the two metrics that I thought were going to be the most improved came back that they were.
Okay.
So my hypothesis, theory, whatever you want to call it, was proven correct because I was actually able to test it.
Okay. So what is the VO max? What does it test?
The VO2 max essentially tests how much oxygen you're able to intake per kilogram of body weight. So it's a ratio between oxygen intake and carbon dioxide expenditure. And through just breathing, it's able to analyze what your biological age is relative to your chronological age.
Okay. So have you seen people that have like a really high biological age over their regular age?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen some as high as 10 years greater than their chronological age, biologically speaking.
Wow.
And then I've seen some people that are 14 years younger biologically. And it's funny because a lot of the times people tell me, I don't want to know that,
Yeah, right.
but you really should. 'Cause
Yeah, especially if you improve, right?
it's eye-opening. You know, the very first time I did a VO2 max test, I came back biologically older.
Yeah.
So I knew, okay, I'm a runner. Something's not right here. Come to find out there's some other factors that played into that. It wasn't just strictly like, you know, you're not in shape the way that I used to be. But it is very eye-opening, and it gives you a full scope of what's going on internally that you may or may not feel. So it goes really, and it pairs really hand in hand with other blood tests. I know some of the other epigenetic testing that you guys do at Reboot as well. It is synergistic
For sure.
other testing.
I feel like this is going to be a standard that I know we're going to utilize it at Reboot for sure, that most people should do it. And I did it with you. And I think my metabolic age was higher than what my actual age is. It was really close, but there was a few things that were high that I was surprised, like not good. And so that kind of drove me into finally getting back into the gym. So I've only been like 6 weeks back to the gym finally, but it's something that, yeah, you don't want to know it, but I think I can give somebody the motivation to actually get into a good routine again. Do you know why it's important to do VO2 max? Like, why is it important for me to know how much oxygen's coming in versus CO2 out?
Well, it's the number one predictor of how long you're going to live.
Is it?
So I'm sure that most people on this earth want to know, want to live for as long as they possibly can. And just by figuring out what the ratio between your oxygen intake, carbon dioxide output is going to give you that
metric.
That metric.
Wow.
Of seeing how long you're going to be able to live.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So is there any other testing that you do now too? Or do you do like any functional screening to mobility type stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely like to do a lot of mobility and flexibility screenings for sure. I actually just spent the weekend in Tallahassee with my friend who runs a blue collar endurance training, and he was running a winter camp, 17 kids from around the country. And we wanted to give them that on-site kind of Division I feel for, a lot of these kids are going to go off to run at big Division I programs. So we had a collaborative couple days, and that's my main thing. As also a certified stretch practitioner, I'm able to test range of motions through mainly the hips and hamstrings. A lot of that power as a runner comes from, and give them feedback on, this is what I think you should do. This is where you're good here, you're not so good here, and give them a plan of attack that they can address in the short term, during their track season.
Yeah, okay.
That, maybe they wouldn't have that same insight if they didn't go to this camp.
So for runners and athletes that are out there, what is a little nugget you can give them that's important for them to stay healthy and to keep their body healthy as a runner?
Use bands.
Bands?
Bands.
What kind of bands?
The tube bands, the monster bands, any kind of band that you can get your hand on, it's going to be absolutely game changing. The way that you can utilize it to regain tendon strength, engage your stabilizer muscles while you're doing compound lifts.
So describe that, like you putting it around your ankles, knees. Where are we putting the bands? What kind of bands are you talking about?
So for these tube bands, one thing that I really like to do is put them around the knees when I'm doing squats, stuff like that.
So this is one of those bands you like slide over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just keeping your knees pulled in. So you got to pull them out to like create a resistance.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So putting those bands on while you're doing movements, regular movements.
Right. And for like monster bands, you can anchor them down to
the monster band,
those really long ones that sometimes you'll see people using for assisted pull-ups and stuff like that.
Okay, like you wrap it around, you put your foot in, pull yourself up.
Right.
Okay,
right.
Cool.
I've known them as monster bands.
Yeah.
Some people probably call them other things, but those are also super effective. You just anchor them down somewhere and use it. Let's say you got knee valgus and your knees tend to go inward.
Oh, in?
Yes, bow in. Now you can pull them out, and now you're able to do exercises where you're engaging the muscles that are weak, which is why that is happening to begin with. So you can really hone in into specific muscle groups and movement patterns that you're deficient in by incorporating these bands. And It's also one of the only ways to build tendon and ligament strength.
Okay. So what's the resistance? That kind of band resistance?
Right.
Got it. So is mobility important in
Absolutely.
your mind?
Absolutely. Mobility, range of motion is everything. So if somebody is only able to train 50% of their total range of motion because they lack the requisite, let's just call it hip mobility, the person that's able to get even into 60 or 70% of their requisite range of motion is going to have significant athletic developmental gains because they're actually able to train more of the muscles that are involved in their sport.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I used to always tell, because that's part of where I started too as a personal trainer, I would always tell the athletes that flexibility is like a strength. So if you don't have flexibility, you're missing strength. Just the inability to like have that extra, like maybe that much extra muscle because of tightness makes a huge difference in your vertical and like your explosiveness. And the hardest thing for me to get athletes to do, which was surprising, is to have them touch their forehead to their knees. Can you touch your forehead to your knees?
I've never tried.
No, because it's one of those things where like that's your whole chain on the backside, right? From your neck to your calf to your heel. That was always one of my things. If I can have my forehead touch my knees, now it takes me maybe like a minute to do that because I got to breathe through it to get that flexibility. I feel like that's a big part of longevity is that flexibility. The full range of motion, like you were saying, is so important for the longevity because when you have a lot of tightness, this is my understanding at least, when you have a lot of tightness, like knots, is like if you look at your muscle as a piece of rope and you tie a knot in it, is it gets shorter, right? So the more knots you have, the shorter that muscle gets, which means it pulls at the joints, like your knee, your hip, your ankle. And then you're running and you're sprinting, you're performing with that tightness. And that's where I'm assuming, you can tell me from your experience, a lot of these knee issues and hip issues, especially knees more than anything, problems are coming around because there's just so much tightness and there's not as much like thought about flexibility and all that. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned knees because I'm probably the most anti-knee guy you'll ever meet where
What's that mean?
I hate messing with knees. If somebody tells me that they've got knee pain, I'm quick to address something else.
Okay.
And
Like, give me an example. What's something else? They come in, they're like, my right knee always hurts. I don't know what's going on. What's your first thought?
hip or foot.
Okay.
It's a hip or a foot problem. Unless there's structural damage in that knee, 9.9 times out of 10, there's something going on with their foot or their hip.
Yeah.
So that's when that mobility screening and the different assessments that obviously I learned doing my personal training and corrective exercise certs, I'm able to not only tell from those screenings, but I also have some really cool like nuance exercise things with the bands and whatnot that I can kind of just, hey, let's try this real fast. And I want my clients to understand what I understand about them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're teaching them, not only just doing it for them.
Right.
You're showing them
They need to kind of have that eureka moment, much like I did after, training on the treadmill, for example. But, your foundation is your feet. It's just like building a house. You got terrible foundation. Whatever you build on top of it, it doesn't matter how nice it looks. It's not going to be sustainable.
Right. Okay. You learned a lot from your own self in the beginning. So do you have like a niche in the kind of people you work with, or is it just anybody who's going through pain, aches?
I work with pretty much anybody, truthfully. Recently, we live in Ocala. Equestrians have been absolutely phenomenal to work with. They're athletes just as much as a runner, track and field athlete is. So a lot of the times actually with the show jumping, it reminds me a lot of cross-country running.
Okay.
Efficiency and tangents. So if you don't have the requisite strength to keep, your core stable and you're falling down on your horse, it reminds me a lot of people that don't have the most efficient running mechanics. Okay. Which it took me about 1.5 years to really master my running mechanics. So I'm able to use my own experience with running and translate that to educating the equestrian.
So make it in simple terms, but what is it that you see with equestrian riders that is out of balance?
A lot of the times it starts with the hips.
Hips.
Your brain will actually forget how to engage some muscles if you use them too much in the wrong way. like right now, we're sitting on our butts right now.
Yeah.
Those riders are not just only sitting, but they're taking impact on every step that the horse takes as well. So they're not only are they getting diminishing returns on their glutes, but it's also affecting their pelvic floor. So what attaches to the pelvic floor? Your hamstrings. What kind of crosses over for your hamstrings? Your calves. So like everything is so important in the pelvis and the glute area for equestrians that's typically the very, very first area that I like to address and see is.
Would you say that's where you'll find their weaknesses?
Oh, absolutely.
Pelvis and glute area?
Oh, yeah.
Is it because of how they're kind of holding the horse? It's like a one-dimensional type thing. Is it because they're only like doing that one-dimensional movement? Kind of like a baseball player. They're always hitting and throwing with one side. So if they don't work the other side, then it creates a weakness.
Right.
Is it the same with the riders or?
It depends on the discipline. That's one thing that I've learned with working with different discipline riders.
Riding a horse is not riding a horse.
Right. I was educated a couple weeks ago that with dressage riding, you actually don't want to be squeezing your horse at all. You want to be very loose and kind of just smooth. It's all about show and pace and rhythm. So you don't want to be tense. But in show jumping, you're going over a 3 foot, 4 foot barrier. You need to have control of your horse and obviously of yourself on the saddle as well. So understanding what kind of rider I'm working with and where they feel they need the improvements. Do they feel like they need it? Like cross country riding is also a thing, you know, on the back end of their show. Do they feel like that's when they get fatigued? Or they feel like they don't start off strong enough and they get better as time goes. So, you know, it's just like a sprinter or a marathon runner in the Olympics. You got to figure out what the niche is of that rider. And then from there, you can really evaluate what muscles need to be engaged more or less.
So it sounds like for the riders, the bands are probably a good thing to do as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's cool. So with the riders, you'll go out to like the World Equestrian Center, or you'll go to the farm and you'll do your assessment with the riders, see where their imbalances are, and then you can start working on them right away.
Essentially, yeah. Like, and that's another great tool. Another great thing of having the treadmill is part of it is a gait analytics feature as well. So on my screen, while somebody is walking, I can adjust body weight. And let's say that, you know, they're righty dominant. So it's going to show me they engage 60% more on the right side and 40% on the left side. So then when I have them walking forward, I kind of know what muscles are engaging and which ones are overactive. And then I can run them in reverse. If it's a more challenging task, different muscles activate when you're walking backwards, of course. Then I'm also able to understand what muscles are engaging correctly walking forward, which ones are engaging correctly walking backwards. And
then you can actually see the improvement too. So you'll see the next time they're walking, it's like a 50-50 now.
Well, actually, I can figure that all out in one session on the very first evaluation session. So especially new people that get on the treadmill, you're changing the entire environment of what's going on waist down. So when I'm adjusting the body weight, they're not changing anything, but their body is reacting to that environment, that atmospherical change. I will slowly start to see one side adapt to be more 50-50 just by changing the amount of body weight. And
you said something interesting before. I was going to see if you could elaborate a little bit. When you overuse a muscle, there's an issue with that. And I think you said like something with the brain.
Right.
So elaborate on that. What does that mean if, let's say, give me an example, like what's a sport or an activity, or let's just say I sit all the time. So how does that connection happen? Like explain that a little bit. How can you overuse a muscle?
Like what we're doing right now, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I like to know about people is what they do for a living. That'll just let me know, okay, this is probably not working correctly. This is probably overstimulated. Your body will your brain will forget how to engage muscles correctly because they're just not being used enough.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So that makes total sense. I don't think I've ever heard it explained that way. Like when we talk about it now, it makes sense. Like if you're not, it's like riding a bike. It takes you a little time to get back on the bike and figure it out. So for riders or any athlete, I could imagine it's pretty easy to get to that point where you're just overusing the same muscles too much. And that's why you got to do all this kind of weird stuff, like get the bands on and do side steps. And
you got to do a lot of the boring stuff before you can ever get to the heavy, fun stuff. That's why I went and got my corrective exercise cert as well, because I needed to understand how to get people to build a solid, large foundation doing the stuff that you might not think is as important. It's not fancy. It's not cool. You can't post that stuff on the internet and like people congratulate you for benching 225 or 315 or whatever.
Right.
But if your shoulder's aching and you end up tearing your rotator cuff, that's not because you're not strong. It's because you're not engaging the right muscles correctly.
Yes, for sure. So can you give a little tip to the riders out there? What's something that they can focus on that you think might help most riders?
When they're squatting, particularly, don't get up until you can feel your glutes.
Okay. Feel the butt.
Build that mind muscle connection, especially in your glutes. They're your biggest muscle. They're your most important postural muscle. So if you want to gain that core stability and strength, you actually got to start on the backside, not the front side.
All right. So glutes, hamstrings, super important.
Super.
Okay.
Arguably the most important, posterior chain is probably the most important for every athlete.
Would you say most riders, horse riders, are quad dominant off the leg?
Oh, yeah. Because they're always in that shortened position here. So at least one of the quad muscles are pretty much engaged 100% of the time.
Okay.
And a lot of the times they have to do that up and down movement too. So you're getting a slight engagement of the quads to lift them up.
So we're getting some little tidbits here. So for the runners, it's get a band, put it around the knees, around the ankles, do those side movements, lateral movements. Riders, make sure you squat, feel your butt squeeze, and fire up before you get back up. Nice. What about for, let's say somebody's just older, doesn't move as much, and doesn't ever squat? Like, what would be something that they can do that you think's safe, but they could do it at home? That's important.
Glute bridge.
Can you explain what a glute bridge is for the average person?
So essentially, you're laying on your back and you got your knees just like I have them right now, but you're in a, supine position. And you're just lifting your pelvis off the floor.
Pushing through the heels, lifting the
heels, lifting the pelvis up. But the key to that is going to be to make sure that your back is flat. You don't want to, if somebody were to put their hand underneath your back, they would want it to be stuck. They don't want to be able to push all the way through. There, you can also kind of force that glute engagement. Tempo is everything. The slower you go, the more mind muscle connection you build. But, super safe. You're not obviously going to put on 50 pounds of muscle doing that, but you're also going to extend the longevity of your muscles and your musculoskeletal system.
If you can think about one thing that you would want everybody to know about what you do, just name something you think that's important for everybody to know. I know, right? There's a ton of stuff.
Yeah, very.
But think about one message you want everybody to know now, because you did say in the beginning, something that's important is you wanted people to know like experience can sometimes weigh over like having credentials. What's something else about your industry? So you're in the rehab, fitness, health industry. What's something that you want everybody to know about that's important?
New is better. The technology that we're using in our business is used in top orthopedic programs and institutions all over the world. And it's right here at your doorstep in Marion County also. So just because you haven't heard of it before doesn't mean that it doesn't work. There's all those NBA players and football players this season that have had ACL. Patrick Mahomes tore his ACL. I bet you right now he's using the exact same treadmill that we have.
Yeah, okay. So embrace technology and don't knock it, but we have to embrace technology because that's where we're going. So for what I do with the scanning, the epigenetic testing, I'd have to have like a 30-year degree in Eastern medicine to probably find out what's really going on in the body the way this scan can do in 15 minutes, right? That's the kind of stuff where I feel like if we embrace technology, we can see way more in the body and see way more than we could if we, had a degree here or a degree there. It's just data. But you and I need to know how to utilize the data. That's the key. Like you have a horse rider who has this left knee issue, like you would need to know what's going to help that person as a rider. But if you studied horse riding and dressage for 10 years, that doesn't mean you're going to necessarily know better how to help that person, right?
It's like, I like to use the analogy, would you want to learn English from a math teacher?
That's a good analogy, yeah.
Right. No, you want to learn from someone that's actively doing it. You're not going to go to school to learn business from someone that's teaching business. I would prefer to learn business from someone that actively owns their own business and is doing the accounting, doing payroll, doing customer relation management, all that stuff on a day-to-day basis. They don't just go look at an agenda and trying to teach it to somebody.
Okay. So just for the audience, tell us where we can find more information about this mobile treadmill, the zero gravity treadmill, and everything else that you do.
We're always active on the social medias, company's World of Motion Performance, Instagram, Facebook. Check out our website as well. And yeah, we're mobile.
All right.
We'll
Perfect.
bring it to you.
All right, man. Look forward to working with you in the future too.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Louis.
Appreciate you having me.